anymore, and it is now called the AIRP. So it's no longer on a military base. It's, I believe, run by ACR, right? And then it was like in this like opera house or playhouse for a while, like in Silver Spring, Maryland, close to where I grew up. And then with the pandemic, they said, hey, we're not doing this anymore. Let's just do it virtually. So fortunately or unfortunately, it's been virtual the past couple of years. I have a couple of residents who just finished or about to finish. And, you know, just intense rad path learning and all the modalities. You usually take it as a second or third year resident, and it's prepares you well for the core exam, which you have to take at the end of your third year. But that gave me the idea to bring RadPath to the med student level. So that's something I started at AHN. You know, we started AMSA RadPath Case of the Month. Again, you know, I run a RadPath course. I created a YouTube channel. And you might be saying, like, what is RadPath? Well, I have an intro video on what that is, but basically correlating the gross pathology imaging with the radiology imaging, and to a lesser extent, the micro pathology, which of course gives you the gross pathology, and explaining why the images look the way they do. And for me, it's a lot of fun. You know, the other day, there were 2 OR cases that my med student was going. He called me up. You know, first we looked at the imaging. Before he went up, came up with a differential. He goes to the OR, the specimen comes out, goes to the frozen room, get a picture of the gross, and then the pathologist is there with the pathology assistant cutting it up and looking under the microscope, and you get to see if you're right or not. And it was a really cool case of a yolk sac tumor in a young female. I'd never seen one live like that. You know, just read about it, but it was really cool to, you know, for me, it never gets old, but to correlate the radiology imaging with the gross path and then the micro path. So for me, that's a lot of fun. I think it's fun for the residents also, as well as the med students. So that's sort of my favorite thing about med student resident teaching is the rad path. I've been doing this for about 17 years. I did a residency at Emory, and then I've been back in Pittsburgh ever since.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Hartman. And the other thing that Dr. Hartman graciously provided was a list of online resources for medical students. So I will put that in the chat. And also, if we send a follow-up email, I will send it along with that for you guys to read about at your leisure. There are a ton. I creeped on them a little bit before this, and I wish I had them as a medical student. So we'll send that on your way. So just be aware of the chat. The next person that we're going to introduce is Dr. Gaddy. She is a little under the weather right now, so her camera's off, but she is a pediatric neuroradiologist at Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago and an associate professor of radiology at Northwestern.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Just wanted to point out that this is going to be first of 3 events that we have planned this year. Please make sure you complete that pre-survey. You only need to complete it once, and we'll have like one final post-survey that you only need to complete once. They are anonymous. And if you attend all 3 events, we will email you a certificate at the end. And of course, we ask that you complete the surveys, although we cannot track them since they're anonymous. But thank you all for being here, and I'm happy to take any questions, but I really want this to be for our other panelist and speaker. But Dr. Strauss and I have been putting together this radiology student interest group intensive for several years now. We do have a website, which we will put in the chat if you have not seen it, or you can go back and look at the recordings of all prior events. And we'll put the recordings of these events on the website as well as on our YouTube account. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Gaddy. The next person is Dr. Strauss. He is an MSK and IR trained radiologist at University of Chicago. He is also a professor of radiology and director of medical student education. Dr. Strauss, do you want to say a few words?
Well, I wasn't expecting to say too much, but I will just a little bit and reiterate. Thank you, Judy, for saying that. And obviously we don't have to say it again. except I will say anyone who has any ideas on how to disseminate uh, to other students that are out there, and we're talking worldwide or across the country, your own school and program, please share these materials, these links, and these two future events, because we're really trying to provide insight and awareness of the specialty to those who might not otherwise have readily available resources within their own school. And so that's really our goal, is to somehow fill the void for a lot of people. And we're trying to figure out how to reach them. So if you have ideas and or social media skills, etc., be sure to share your thoughts. I can't promise a prize, but I might come up with one if you have a great idea. So having said all that, I really not going to add more and leave the rest of the time to the panel. It really is just about sharing what a great profession this can be for those who want to learn about it. So enjoy, and please keep the comments coming in the chat, and we'll be monitoring.
The next person we're going to introduce is Marianne Rule. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Tell me if I didn't. She is a PGY2 at Northwestern.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marianne. I'm a second year resident at Northwestern. I'm from New York City originally. I went to medical school there and then moved to Chicago for residency. So I did my intern year in Chicago as well. And now second year of radiology, so really loving it. I have a 6-month-old at home, so I might intermittently be in and out of the camera, so I apologize in advance. But just a great example, of how radiology is also great for work-life balance. I have a baby, and my program has been extremely supportive with that as well. So if anyone has children or is thinking about having a family, I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Awesome, thank you. And our final panelist is Matt Frank. He is a PGY1 at University of Louisville with me.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt. I'm from Louisville originally. I went to University of Kentucky for medical school and then did my intern year last year in Florida. And then now I'm at U of L as an R1. Radiology is a great field. I hope you all choose to do it. Um, so if you all have any questions about what radiology residency is like, or how to study, or how to apply, intern year, all the things, I'm not that far removed. So feel free to ask any questions.
All right, and without further ado, let's get started on some of the questions you all submitted. If you have questions you want to drop in the chat as well, or you want to drop to one of us individually, ideally not me, because I'm going to be in and out of talking, but maybe Sen. We are more than happy to also accommodate those questions as well. The first one for the panelists is, what drew you to radiology in the first place?
I can start. So I initially didn't know anything about radiology. I had applied into medical school thinking I wanted to do something related to oncology and or women's health. That's what drew me into medicine in the first place. And then in my medical school, we were exposed to radiology actually pretty early on. Like I got exposed to ultrasound from probably day one of medical school, and I thought this was super interesting. I really, really liked it. And I was in medical school like during the COVID era. And so we didn't get much exposure. And then there was like the summer between first and second year where a lot of people sort of didn't have any plans. There was no traveling, people weren't seeing much. And I spent a lot of time in the hospital just kind of working with and like shadowing a lot of radiologists because I liked ultrasound and wanted to learn more about it. And for me, it was very niche in that I discovered the world of breast radiology. And that's actually what led me to, going to radiology in the first place, because the world of breast radiology kind of mixed, my interest in women's health and my interest in oncology within the field of imaging, which I really liked. And that's also the reason I talk about that is that a lot of people think that, going into radiology, you're never going to see patients. And, in some specialties, you might not see patients, but it can be a patient facial subspecialty if you want it to be. I'm currently rotating in MSK radiology as my rotation now, and they do a lot of procedures. I have a lot of colleagues in body imaging that do procedures. Interventional radiology is very patient-facing. Breast imaging is very patient-facing. So, and I knew that I wanted to continue to see patients, and I wanted to have that. And so that sort of is what drew me into radiology, and is just kind of finding out the world of breast imaging. But then as I rotated, through body, through MSK, I just realized I loved sort of the breadth of the specialty that, we could be the quote unquote the doctor's doctor and be able to learn about so many different pathologies and so many different subspecialties. And though, even though I do plan to apply into breast imaging, like I sort of love the breath and butter and everything that I've been doing in every subspecialty. So that's sort of what drew me in, to the field in the first place. So yeah.
I can go. So I guess like my medical experience, I honestly didn't love any of my core rotations in medical school. I did sort of like emergency medicine, but I always loved looking at my patient's scans. And then I think just like radiology in general, like your knowledge base has to be so wide and so deep, because you interact with like every body system, every specialty, and you will have consultants ask for your opinion on cases, which I think is really cool. So if you really like anatomy, and then also like not to mention the technology, I mean, we could probably spend the whole panel discussion on AI. It's like really exciting. So if you like any of those things, I think it would be a great fit.
I can go next. As I mentioned, very lucky my dad is a radiologist, so I always knew it was a great field. But actually, I liked all my rotations, really except for surgery. That was my first one and didn't have the best team. Um, but almost went to pediatrics. And this is a funny story for Dr. Strauss and Dr. Gaddy. If it hadn't been for Dr. Furman, who was former, great radiologist, great medical educator, um, who taught me like the intro radiology course, and I was telling him, hey, I'm trying to decide between peds and radiology, and just had a long talk with me and just saying, what do you really like? Just think really hard, and then what I really liked was the pattern recognition, and I liked the pathology without having to look at as much as I like rad path. I like the gross path a lot more, and then just seeing like the images, like why it looked the way they did, and it just made like a lot of sense to me, and it was a lot of fun. And I always tell my students, like I genuinely have a lot of fun with what I'm doing, and just using all your talents. Like you have to know a little bit of physics, a little bit of chemistry, a lot of medicine, a little bit from each different specialty, GYN, surgery, medicine, everything. Um, and putting it all together to help the patient. Like for me, I do a lot of abdominal imaging. So if you're doing image guided biopsy or drainage, really helping, getting a good biopsy sample so they can get the genetic markers to help the patient is just, for me, very, very satisfying. Just using all your talents to help the patient in that sort of way.
I can go next and add one of the things I found super important was the immediate sort of gratification that you can get with radiology. You don't always get with all the other specialties in the same way. It just sort of it kept me fueled in sort of in a certain fashion. I certainly will agree about pattern recognition and sort of the role that you're playing, but it's just that you're inseparable from quality care. There isn't a patient in the medical system in this day and age that does not have imaging in some fashion. And most radiologists have to have as you said, sort of a breadth of knowledge. You don't have to be the world's expert in any one of them. You get to work with them and you get colleagues. But it's really just about sort of knowing that your actual performance every single day is critical to not just tens or hundreds of people each day. That's every case, and that just it's gratifying in a sense that you don't always see the results in all the other professions quite as quickly. And I think I also like the flexibility. I mean, I think it's been mentioned before. I think it was Marianne who was talking a little bit about that, and it's just critical to in this day and age to sort of as things move so quickly that you sort of are able to sort of morph and change. And our profession is one in particular that's absolutely cutting edge, not just the technology and AI, which has been mentioned, it'll come up again and again, I'm sure. But it's just overall, what we're doing now is not what we did 10 years ago, and certainly not what we're going to be doing 10 years from now. So one of the things that you either have to love and embrace is that it's going to be in constant motion. And that I find fun. This doesn't get boring. You don't get stuck in a rut. And if you are, you can get out of it. Because the one other thing I'll add, even if you subspecialize, the one thing about radiology compared to most of the other specialties is that our boards covers the overall, all of radiology. So you can specialize early on, shift gears 10 and 15 years later and focus in a different area. I'm originally an IR guy, for example, and that's what I did day in and day out. But as of now, mid-career, I'm doing very little of it. I still do some certain procedures, but your needs shift. And I didn't have to do anything special to sort of shift with my needs. And I think going forward, this is becoming increasingly important for all of you guys as you design and create careers that are going to be sort of personalized and individualized. It's not you fitting them, it's the system fitting you. But I didn't say that out loud, so don't quote me. But radiology allows it in a way that's very, very helpful. So.
The next question that was submitted was, how do you find and foster a relationship with mentors?
Um,
Gunpoint? No,
um,
bad joke.
I, um, I just thought of something today, and I'm actually, so I'll explain why this is relevant. But this morning, Northwestern has a new like chief of breast imaging. She just started in July, and I haven't met her. I hadn't met her yet until today, and she gave a conference to the radiology residents this morning, and I thought, and oh, what a great way, to introduce myself as I'm interested in breast imaging. And my mind is like, oh, I'd love to reach out to her and see if she could potentially be a mentor to me. And so what I did is, at the end of the conference, I just introduced myself. Hi, I'm Marianne. I'm an R2. We haven't met yet because I haven't, rotated on breast since you started, but wanted to introduce myself. I told her, I'm very interested in breast imaging. I'm looking forward to working with you if you have any opportunities. She's very involved in research and advocacy. So I told her, I'd love to get involved with anything that you have ongoing. And I just, said that. And I think that's sort of a great way for any of you guys to find mentors in medical schools. Just be open about it, introduce yourself, say that you're interested, whether it's in person in an email. And, no matter how busy people are, people get very, very excited when you tell them that you are interested in radiology and you want to get involved. And like that's what I, did this morning. And so, I encourage all of you guys to do that. And even it's just asking around, even asking to rotate on radiology or talking to radiology residents and fostering that kind of relationship and telling them what you're interested in. It doesn't have to be research. It doesn't, find something that you like and sort of keep fostering that relationship. Whether it's through emails, asking them to review something, asking them questions about anything. And so, that was sort of what I did this morning. And, I'm trying to find a lot of mentors in the world of breast imaging. So, but, that same kind of discussion that I had applies to all you guys. So I thought that was a great example.
Yeah, I guess I mean those are all great points. I guess I'll just piggyback off that. Like, yeah, introducing yourself to like people I think goes a long way. Like, for example, like Victoria and I as program director. I introduced myself to him after our medical student symposium that we do every year between University of Cincinnati, University of Kentucky, and University of Louisville. And I feel like that went a long way. I think you get to meet people who have like-minded interests of you. So that's always good. And then I think a really important part of mentorship, and we actually just had a grand rounds on mentorship, but something that's really important is just finding someone that's invested in you. Some mentors are better than others and are really invested in medical students. So I think finding the right mentor is really important. But once you find a good one, keep them because they can go a long way in your career.
Yeah, I'll agree with all that, Matt. And I'll say some of it I think is luck, and finding a good mentor. But I will say, like, the old quote, like, luck favors the well prepared. I mean, whoever's on this call, 10 of you, like, come in here. I can probably, speaking for everyone else, we would be glad to be your mentors. It sounds like you already have some great mentors, but just showing up, showing interest, is 95% of the game. and you wouldn't believe, yeah, just a positive attitude, wanting to learn, just goes extremely far. And like I said, not everyone will be equally eager to help mentor, but I mentor it from every level. From we get high school observers that I've been mentoring now in undergrad. Got our first person accepted into med school, and still just give them my cell phone. Send me a text. I send them a text every once in a while. Um, so, but if you find a great mentor, latch on, show enthusiasm, and they'll be in your corner.
Not to butt in and jump off of that as the host, but once you do show an interest in radiology, we're really nice. We're a little quiet sometimes, but we're really nice. And if you particularly just be your authentic self when you get there and show an interest and be upfront, there's a lot that people will do for you. One good example was a few weeks ago, I went up to our breast department and I was like, I want to give a journal club. And they were trying so hard. I apologize for the cat food. They were trying so hard to get a sponsor. And at one point when they couldn't, they offered to have a potluck at their house. We ended up finding a sponsor, but like this is the level of dedication that people will provide to you if you just really show up and do the work as well. And I think that's true of every subspecialty, not just breast. If no one has any other comments, how has the landscape changed in terms of the number of radiology residency graduates who decide to pursue additional fellowship training? That was a thorough question. That was good.
I can start. So I'm at Allegheny Health Network in Pittsburgh, PA. We are unique in that we are sort of like we don't have a definite institutional relationship. We have a relationship with Drexel University, which is sort of interesting. They actually don't have their own medical campus anymore, so they send a lot of their, I don't want to say farm out their students to a lot of different places. We're their biggest campus in Pittsburgh. And I'll also mention, who watches The Pit? Does anyone watch The Pit? I know Judy does. It's filmed at our hospital. Yeah, who likes The Pit? Okay. Well, I gotta sell it on my TikTok thing. We dissect cases. We say as seen on The Pit, which is like one of my favorite things to do. So I'll throw that out there. So we are not your typical university program, though I did graduate from a university program at Emory. I'll also mention that our program was just voted or chosen or finalist to be for the Mini for outstanding residency training program. It's us against Penn in Philly, so it's like a cross-state rivalry. So we're not your traditional program. For the med students, when you are applying for residency, that's something to keep in mind. You want to get a university place, community place, or a hybrid place, sort of like us. From what I can see, we've always done a lot of, let's say the majority, like almost every year, like 100% going to fellowship. This coming year, one of our residents is going straight into, he's joining the overnight ER shift with us. But that's the first person in like 17 years that's not done a fellowship.
I'll jump in. I think this question's a little bit targeting the more senior of us because we have a scale and a scope to comment on. And that is generally most people do fellowships. I would not say it's 100% at this point in time. The market is insanely friendly right now for people. There are jobs everywhere. And that fluctuates in its cycles. And who knows where it's going to be in 5 years. So nothing's a guarantee. But I think generally what it comes down to is you go through the residency and the 4 years of training, and you get a very good, certainly general appreciation, but you really don't necessarily have the confidence and the numbers of cases underfoot. And it takes time. We have the longest training, neurosurgery and radiology is the longest when you add in our fellowship. It's for good reason. You really need to see a certain number of images what I call mileage underfoot. And that fellowship is what allows you to really start focusing increasingly on a particular area, not just for future job and personal interests, but also just in terms of getting, again, another trip around the track so you're really more comfortable running without necessarily support or feeling like you need someone to help hold you. Having said that, I think also it's also increasing because of the number of the specialties. There's an increasing drive towards subspecialty. And so the general can work certainly for the ER type environment and itself, its own specialty, and has its own subspecialty training potentially. But increasingly, our graduates and jobs that are out there, people tend to focus because you tend to be more efficient when you're in one particular area and more comfortable. And most importantly, the referring physicians prefer and like to have somebody who has specialty training in, say, neuro or body or ultrasound or whatever it is that you might personally specialize in. So that's what drives, I think, most fellowship, so the interest in fellowships, but it's not mandatory or required. And that's something that will change, I think, over time.
I'll just add to that that I would not be able to do the job that I have without my fellowships.
And notice how that's plural, by the way, because
Fellowships, yeah. So if you want to do generally, I know one person who did not do 2 fellowships. That's it. If you want to do pediatric neuroradiology, you have to do what I call adult neuro or diagnostic neuro, and then peds neuroradiology fellowship each 1 year, or peds radiology, which is more like general peds with a little bit of neuro, and then peds neuro. But yeah, I would not be able to have the job I have without those fellowships, and I'm very grateful that I chose to do them.
but I think what you guys who are our listeners need to know, it's that you're not just deferring yet another year or 2 years downstream. I mean, yes, technically you're not an attending until you get hired as one, but every year that goes on, the employment, the rate you're paid, et cetera, all those just keep escalating with time. So you're not deferring at a cost as you might initially think, if you don't have the understanding of the process. So even though you're not an attending for 7 years, when you come out, you're actually quite well compensated relative to, say, somebody who only trained 2 years or less. Did that help or create questions? Maybe questions.
Let me make one other point. This is something I didn't know as a resident until I became a fellow. Is that there are some fellowships which are ACGME fellowships and some fellowships which are non-ACGME fellowships. So abdominal imaging, which I do, is typically, I was interested at some places it's ACGME, other places it's not. Just meaning you're under the auspices of GME with like duty hours, can't moonlight, stuff like a lot more stringent. Where I'll just give you an example. We have a non-ACGME MSK fellowship at our place, and it's sort of like I don't want to say like a hybrid year, but the resident the fellows will act as junior attendings like once a week, like doing general radiology, and they can moonlight on the weekends if they want to, sort of thing. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but where I went for ACGME fellowship, we weren't allowed to moonlight, and we're just doing body imaging.
Well, a lot of these topics also may be well ahead of our audience.
Yeah, the med students. Yeah.
Is most, I don't know if you can use your clapping hands or something. Are most of you guys first and second year medical students? There you go. I got a couple thumbs up on the images. There you go. So let's not get it. I mean, like I said, we'll talk about anything, but let's not scare you. These are decisions that are 5 years down the road for you.
And even as a resident who is at the worst call year, as your R2 and beginning of your R3 year, I'm still really thankful that we have all of these years, because the depth and breadth of the training is why you go into it. It's so cool. Like Marianne said, you are the doctor's doctor. You get to know everything about everything, and it's really neat. But you're liable for for that. So when you get out, you want to be the most brilliant person in the entire world, the most educated person. And it feels really good. And you can answer questions about anything, but every year counts. You really have to, you're not running around on the floors, you're not dealing with social work, but you are kind of having a brain intensive for 4 years. And it's really neat, but it's also useful to be a little bit longer.
Well, and maybe this is a quick chance to say this is a very tried and true and tested process. So, you know, rest assured, you're not going to be thrown into a circumstance or on a ride you can't handle until you're ready for it. So in that sense, trust the process. It's really at your stage of the game is, do you like it? Is this fun? Is this something you want to read about at 3 in the morning and stay up late or get up early to read about? That's what you need to be making this decision on. A little bit less what's the process, because the process itself is very temporary when it comes to your full life and 30 to 40-year career. That's really what you need to be thinking about, and less of the how do I get there.
All right. The next question is, please give us a reality check on how difficult the core exam actually is compared to the typical perception by medical students or trainees, and how studying is integrated into the schedule of a resident during training.
Matt, Marianne, is this something you're worrying about yet or not yet?
Maybe a little. I can't really answer the first question about core since I haven't taken it yet, but I could maybe speak a little bit about um studying. There is a lot of studying. I'm not gonna lie, like starting R1, I almost felt a little bit like starting M1. It's like by the end of my intern year, I'm like, cool, like I'm a doctor, like I'm doctoring every day. I like can run, the floor. I have patients. I don't feel clueless. And that was like June. And then, July I started radiology and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know anything. Um, and that's like normal, that's why, I was so lucky to have, my R2 and R3 fellow, co-residents were like, it's completely normal, you start from the beginning and there is a lot of studying, but I love what I do. I'm not gonna lie, there is a lot of studying to it, but we have as an R1 at Northwestern, for example, I have had all my weekends as an R1. I was working sort of a standard like 8 to 5 Monday, Friday. And so there is a lot of time to study outside of work. And, a lot of it is just time management. I've learned a lot about time management since I had a kid. Like my Google Calendar is just like very, very organized. But, you know, everyone in here is either a medical student, a resident, or an attending. So we're all very, very smart and capable. And so I think the main lesson is just like the time management that you learn in med school, you just keep it forward and keep doing that as a resident and just have a schedule. I still do Anki, I still do, questions, and it's whatever worked for me in med school in terms of like retention and learning things, I just have brought forward as a radiology resident, and I'm basically just doing the same thing, um, in terms of how I study. And now, especially since having a kid, I've gotten a lot better with time management and sort of like having time with my daughter, having time to study, having time off, and sort of managing all of that. So, whatever works for you in med school, whatever works for you and didn't work for you, you will then bring it forward as a radiology resident. You'll realize like whether you do better with watching videos or reading books or doing questions or doing Anki, all of that. For me, I think it works the same when you're sort of starting to learn the same material in radiology. So all of that stuff, that's actually one of my mentors said, it's like you need to learn how to learn. And I think that was like a really smart thing to talk about. And I spent a lot of med school kind of learning how to learn. And then I did the same thing in radiology as an R1. Like the first few months of like, we're learning how to learn radiology, learning the anatomy. And now I'm sort of as an R2 implementing all of that stuff that I learned as an R1. So it'll come with time, just as like that overwhelming feeling you felt as an M1, I feel like you'll feel again as an R1, but that's just completely expected and it'll come with time. And so hopefully that was a little bit helpful. I can't answer anything about core, unfortunately, but
Yeah, I agree. We actually, just to build off of that, I agree with everything you said. But the other thing that was really interesting to me that one of our fours last year, unfortunately, Matt didn't get the chance to meet, he started a research project trying to figure out the correlation between number of studies read as a resident and their core exam outcome. And what they were at least preliminarily starting to find was if you were really, really engaged in the reading room and just picking up hard studies, talking with people, not kind of sitting in the corner, you tended to do really well on core exam, regardless of where you were on the studying spectrum. So interesting insight, was not published, was just kind of a little thing that got started, but I found that really interesting. And I do think it correlates. If you're engaged in the reading room and taking hard questions, those tend to be the residents that I go to ask when I have something going on. So I'd imagine that correlates with doing well in core as well.
Yeah, I guess I can just add my perspective as a new radiology resident. Yeah, radiology, it's like a mountain to climb. It's just so different than the previous learning that you did in internal medicine or other subspecialties. We just don't have a lot of exposure in radiology in medical school. Um, but one thing I like about it is it's very flexible. Like you can come home and like study a couple hours one night, and then the next night or one weekend, if you just got a ton of stuff going on, you can not study as much. But then the next night, like gear up and study more. And then plus, like the way radiology is set up typically in residency is you do something for 1 month at a time. For example, you just do neuro, and you can go just really hard into neuro for a month. So I kind of like that aspect of it. And yeah, like your senior residents are really great resources. Like Victoria has been a great resource to me. And the one thing that's sort of worked for me is, and one of my attendings told me this, is like one thing that you see or read one day in the reading room and that you don't know a lot about it, go read about it at home. And then that'll like stick with you more. And I've found that to be true.
All right. The next question. How has the workload in radiology, how has the workload in radiology changed over the past several years? Dr. Strauss, I see you smiling over there.
All for the better. What can I say? No, it's the workload is it's increased. I mean, every year over year, it's been about anywhere from a 5 to 10% increase. And so the numbers are up in terms of number of exams. To counter that, our efficiency and ways to work through exams have become much more efficient, with digital imaging and not having to deal with film, et cetera. So things have evolved sort of in sort of a counter direction with the overall net being up. And so in general, there is no shortage of imaging. It'll be more than ever going forward. I think to a certain extent, a lot of the new future technology is going to have to look to how are we going to harness things like AI and make it work with us and for us, as opposed to replace us. It really isn't capable of replacing us. I think in the way that some might pontificate and be initially nervous about, because it can spew out a lot of information, but it doesn't necessarily have the ability to coalesce it and produce a report that allows our fellow clinicians to make better decisions. And I think that's really what it comes down to is we are really, as somebody mentioned earlier, the doctor's doctor, we're consultants. We've never forgotten that, and that we need to, the world ahead of us is how can we become more effective consultants with with the changing landscape, not that we're not going to be consultants. And that's been the challenge. So when it comes to sheer numbers, there is no shortage of work.
It's kind of fun. It's like a game. That's all I have to say. Like as a resident, you're kind of just learning how to get more accurate and smarter and fast. And I've never been a video gamer, but this must be how it feels. It's very like you go the next day and you want to up your numbers, but also up your accuracy. And it's kind of cool. It's cool to see how far you can push your brain.
Well, more importantly, you want to push your brain. I mean, let me throw this out there for those who are in the training bubble, as I call it. You want to push yourself as absolutely hardest possible. This is the place to do it. You've got people to support you. You're in a protected environment, and you need to learn where your own skills. As you said, you can't run a marathon without training for it. You got to work your way up to that. it's not just volume, but also in terms of other elements. And that's the key, is it's a group effort. You learn that day one. It's never you against the system. It's you and all your buddies. And they may be in this day and age literally physically next to you, or they could be virtual, but you're never not without friends in radiology. It's a team play. Always has been.
All right. If no one has any other comments, the next question is, what is the importance of research in becoming a radiologist?
I can start that. I did zero research as a medical student. When I was applying, radiology was nowhere as competitive as it is now. I did get involved in research as a resident and found that I enjoyed it, but certain types of research, I really like the more educational research. And I had some really great mentors that helped foster that, including my father. And wanted to play that forward with my med students. So as as the new attending who is put in charge of the clerkship, trying to find meaningful experiences for our students. And in the past, I did a couple of case reports as a resident also, but this is like during the double aughts. They used to be able to publish a ton of case reports, and for whatever reason, that was they stopped doing that, and that took a certain avenue away from what I consider like intro level research. I don't know if you guys see like Case in Point. Also, it's done by the ACR, very very good, but it's so popular by the med students and the residents. There's at one point there was a 2-year waiting point for once your case was accepted before it would get published. So I had the idea, like, hey, let's do a AMSR. So that's the AMSR is the group that Dr. Strauss and Gaddy and I belong to, the Alliance of Medical Student Educators in Radiology, to do a case of the month by med students for med students, so like med student level cases, supervised by AMSR members. So we have that now, the AMSR case of the month, the AMSR RadPath case of the month as well, and that was something we started. And when I get new med students or mentees, that's often like the first thing I'll do with them. Say, hey, let's start with a case report first, just so we have something to put on your CV. And then invariably, the students, I can't remember who was friends with Savannah, but a project I did with Savannah, who was my med student at the time, we're just talking. And it usually comes from these conversations, just something I don't know about. She's telling me about these Anki flashcards. I'm like, Savannah, like, how do you do so well on board? So like, how do you get so smart? And she's like, Anki. I'm like, tell me about Anki. And that was the impetus for that project. Like I said, we did an educational exhibit about that for RSNA, got an award, and then just kept running with that. So then the next year, I got a very motivated med student and said, hey, let's make an Anki deck for the med students, right? So that was a project sort of thing. And that being said, like, I'm not doing research projects with all the students, but I do at least an AMSR case of the month to get them at the entry level, and they have someone to write on their CV. I'm not sure if that makes sense. So there definitely are I'd say a lot more opportunities than when I was a med student. Like I said, when I was a med student, like, I don't think anyone was doing much research. And even during residency, I was one of the few people like doing case reports or RSNA exhibits just because I thought it was fun. So again, if you can find a good mentor and a good project, I'd say jump on. A lot of it's the timing. I don't want to get too much into the details, but finding a good mentor who knows how to get you through a project. God knows I was on a bunch of projects in college that didn't go anywhere. It was biochemistry research, and retro, it was very frustrating. So there's not. So I've been on that end too. So my advice is, if you are interested, find a good mentor who has a good track record, or has some good ideas for a project.
I just want to throw in something else, because I think it's important to understand what research means. It's a term that's used very broadly. And basically, it's really more of a question of showing you're intellectually curious and that you really want to be part of the solution and move the profession and medical care forward. That's what research is about. And I think people sort of think it's more about test tubes and formal projects and a lot of other stuff. And it really comes in numerous shapes and forms. And so, especially the educational stuff, it can be very squishy. But it's really about what can you do to make clear, concise observations, a hypothesis, collect data, present them to others so that you're moving the profession forward. And so that's what research can be. And it can be very, very, um, I'm doing something for a month and then I don't do anything for 2 months and I come back to it, that kind of thing, or much more of a continuous ongoing process. And so it comes in many shapes and formats. But the key is to just, I like to say, stay curious, show that curiosity, and it's your ability. Is it necessary? I think what Matt was sort of implying, no, it's not a mandate. I think it just helps differentiate you from others if you're at a stage as a student or a trainee and you're trying to differentiate your path in some fashion or other. But ultimately, I think it's less about what you get out of it. And I mean, from that perspective, it's really more about you testing yourself and expanding your skill set in such a way that actually translates into better appreciation of what you want. And so that ultimately, I sort of think of these training environments as like a buffet table. You want to sit there and you pay the admission, try everything, do a little bit of a lot of things, sort of test it out, see what it is that you like, so that when you're looking for a job and you're actually setting up your life, you sort of like love it, don't want to do that, do want to do a little bit of that. And you sort of create the formula that works for you. But until you actually have done some of it, and research is just one of the elements, and teaching is another, it's hard to know. You're basing it on what people tell you. It's best to do it based on your own personal experience. But I think Marianne and Matthew, you can say something similar. I mean, comment about at your stage. It's an ongoing process. It never stops.
That's true. I mean, it does never stop. But I mean, something I also want to emphasize is really only do things that you're interested in. I've met a lot of med students who are like, oh, I have to do research, but like I hate it, but like I have to do this, and they like get involved with projects and they don't put their heart into it because they just don't like it. And find something that you like. And in the realm of research, there's a lot of things that are, like I personally am not super interested in basic science research. I am very interested in education and clinical research and things that can be, applied and educational projects. So that's what I got involved with. I did it's a case in point, which I thought was, very nice because I got to write some case reports and there's a big educational aspect to it. And now I'm only working on projects that I'm really interested in, in the world of breast imaging, for example. And I even talk to mentors and ask them like, hey, like I'm very interested in this topic specifically. And then you can even ask your mentors, like, is there anything that I can be involved with within X, Y, or Z? And in that, hopefully, by asking around, trying to see, you can, work in something that you're interested in. And I think at the end of the day, number one, you'll be a lot more passionate about it. You'll be happier to do it. And I think, when you're applying into radiology, when you're passionate about something, like the people talking to you and, your colleague, your residency attendings, like they can tell. And I feel like you can fish out the people that are really passionate about what they do and or if they're working on a project they like versus just trying to check a box. And so, whatever it is, whether it's like education or research or advocacy, whatever it is that you want, find something that you like and that you want to do. And I think that will really, really go a long way, whether it's in research or in any other topic.
Yeah, I guess I can talk a little bit about my experience about this too. As Dr. Strauss alluded to, research is such a broad term. One of my medical school mentors actually called it scholarly activity. There's just a wide encompassing, things you can do with research. So as a medical student, I got involved not only in radiology research, but some pulmonology stuff as well, and actually got to go to Honolulu, Hawaii for a conference for free, paid for by the VA. So you can do some cool opportunities with it. And then at these conferences, they're really cool. You get to meet a lot of really cool people that are interested in the same field as you are. Again, leading to connections, mentorship, things like that can foster that really well. And then you can get a good letter of recommendation when you're applying to radiology residency or whatever residency that you end up applying to. So ultimately, I would encourage all of you to at least try some form of scholarly activity while you're in medical school. And if it's not for you, that's fine. But like at least give it a try.
All right,
And just to touch, oh, sorry. Just to touch back on what Matthew was saying, that like he did research in pulmonology. Like it doesn't also have to be necessarily related to radiology. If there's something else that you're interested in, you know, feel free. There's always going to be, you can always find another way to go back to it. Like during COVID, the dean of admissions of my medical school, she was a neuroradiologist. And so I asked, because I knew her through like admissions in med school, like, hey, like I'd love to spend some time with you. And so I'd spent some time in neuroradiology and ended up like writing a paper on like pituitary adenomas. And like I'm not going into neuro, and I'm not going into neuroradiology, but like I apply that stuff that I did every time I'm on neuro. Like every time I'm reading MRIs, I like know a lot about pituitary adenomas because I did a lot of research. I, helped write a paper on it, but that sort of came back to me a few years later, and now like I have like co-residents asking me about like stuff because I like how to measure and things like and stuff like that. So, that wasn't necessarily related to what I wanted to do, but I thought it was very interesting, and I got exposed to it, and I ended, roll with it. So whether you do research, or any type of activity in internal medicine or surgery or whatever it is, you'll find some way to use that knowledge, and you'll learn a lot from it, whether it is what you end up doing or not. And so I think in the end of the day, it's always a good thing. So,
And let me also point out for those who interested in radiology or maybe not, or you're sort of like still totally undecided, which would be normal for someone your age and station and process. Do not think that work or research in our field or outside our field makes a difference from our perspective. We are interested in people who have done whatever, and it's a generic process and skill that we're after. We just want you to be plastic enough and have gone through the process, not necessarily in our field only. We're not that particular. Now, the nice thing about radiology research is everyone else writes radiology research because it tends to something they can relate to. So keep that in the back of your mind. If it is radiology, won't serve you poorly if you go into internal medicine or surgery or whatever. But just keep that, back there. It's not topic specific as it is for very few specialties.
all right. Well, we are getting to the hour, so I just want to start by saying thank you to all of our panelists for taking time out of your day. I know everyone's working really hard, and I really appreciate it. Thank you to the medical students for coming. You all are fantastic. You're very motivated as M1s and M2s to go out of your way and come to an additional session. I remember how hard that was. So thank you all so much. I did post the end of session survey in the group chat. I will also be sending up a follow-up email to all of the participants. Please be sure to complete the pre and post survey if you're able. Even if you get tired halfway through of answering like half my questions, that's okay. Just submit. It's fine. But do your best if you wouldn't mind. We track that data over the course of several years just to see how we can improve. Shameless plug for our next session. I will be teaching people about search patterns when they start their clinical years and rotations. So that's really useful to just really have an idea of how to look at imaging before it gets started. And then that will be followed by a physician that is actually based out of Canada who will be discussing visual illusions in radiology, and also kind of his unique path to getting to radiology, and some insights that he gained from it for medical students that are on their journey as well. And he is really cool to talk to, so I'm sure that you will enjoy your experience with him. That will be held next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time, and I will be sending out those links. I'll actually go ahead and send out the poster to you guys with the follow-up so you have it available to you. We will be having 3 total sessions, as Dr. Gaddy mentioned, and if you attend all 3, you will get a certificate that just looks nice. It shows your involvement in radiology, so I would encourage you guys to take advantage of that. It's just an extra couple hours out of your day. Other than that, I don't have much else to share, but if anyone has any questions, you're more than welcome to email me. You will be getting an email from me, so that's how you will have access to that. And I look forward to seeing you all at the next session. Does anyone have any burning questions? Any concerns?
And I'm
All right.
happy to stay on a little longer if there's somebody who has one, because I think Sarah typed a question into, it wasn't lost on us. I'll follow up. And for those who want to listen to it, she was asking specifically the difference between DR and IR. And I'll stay on longer just to answer that.
Yeah, no worries. And then Dr. Strauss and Dr. Gaddy, after that, if you wouldn't mind staying on so we could brainstorm the next session a little bit.
Absolutely. Sarah, are you able to stay on just a little bit? Just anyone else who wishes to?
Definitely.
Okay, you're going to get the quick 2 minute, because it really is only 2 minutes. Long story short, the difference between IR and DR isn't as much as people think. It's not entirely separate. Think of it from your perspective as a student as having your fellowship already arranged 3 years early. It is a little bit harder. Certainly, it's a much more competitive pathway because it is a very highly desired fellowship within IR and our training. But your first 3 years, plus minus, is essentially the same. You still take the same boards in the end. You are boarded radiologist with the ACR, the College of Radiology. And ultimately, you then do your specialty sub-training in your senior year, a little extra time doing IR-related stuff with an additional year. So it allows time for research and extra specialty training that wasn't necessarily as easily done when it was pure 4 years and then just 1 year IR. But it's not drastically different. There are still pathways, so you can still go into DR and still find yourself in an IR position. It's not an impossible task. It's not, not all positions are that way, but it's certainly doable. I would basically say is pursue it if you have a great love of and know that that's what you really like at this joint in time. I will say increasingly they're discovering people who have done that and then they drop out and say, oh, after 2 or 3 years of the general training, they're like, wait a minute, I really want to be a DR person, and then they give their space up. So it's going both ways. It's still fairly new. So there's still it's not 100% worked out. It's hard to know what you want to do as an adult, as I like to say. And I think increasingly people are discovering they don't necessarily know. So it's like, and the process is, we want everyone happy, somewhere, somehow, and the adjustments are made in every direction. So if that helps. Is that sort of a quick answer, or is there something more specific you hope to?
No, that definitely answered my question. And then I think you mentioned that you went into IR first. Is that correct?
I did. That was my fellowship.
So
and I
you went
loved
right
it.
into that specialty first, and then you were the one that also discovered that you later on
And just to
YAR.
finish the scenario, I finished my fellowship. They hired me on to start back then, which was something unheard of, which